Hey everybody, Kyle Sasser here, and it is everybody's favorite time of the month. That's right, real estate market statistics time. These real estate market statistics are for Hillsborough County for December 2024. So you might look at this report and say, Kyle, you said that this is December 2024 numbers. Why does it say November on the front of this? And the answer is because we really compare monthly statistics. A day is way too short and a week is also too short of a time frame. So we compare month to month. The other piece of this is we compare year to year. So we are comparing November 2024 numbers to November 2023 numbers. Now, I do pay a little bit more attention to, the month to month numbers because the market has been a little funky the last couple of years. We haven't had a clear trajectory like we had the previous 5 years. So I've been paying a little bit more attention to the month to month numbers. But the natural real estate cycle is in the course of 12 months, you will have a natural ebb and flow of sales. Obviously, in the wintertime months, things tend to slow down with the holidays and all that, which is what we're getting into right now. And then obviously, the summertime is usually a time when a lot of people are looking at houses. So you will naturally expect to see a lot more houses for sale in the summertime than in November and December. And so by comparing year to year, comparing 2024 to 2023, that gives us a chance to say, okay, so compared to this time last year, how are we doing? So the story for the Dayton Metro Statistics, which covers an area from roughly Piqua to Springboro and West Alexandria to Xenia, the story by and large has been, we have built up a little bit of inventory, but prices have continued to climb for the last couple of years. And that trend, well, put it this way, we are in the winter doldrums, which means that things are taking a little bit longer to sell. And statistically, yes, there is a little bit of a price decline, but we're about where we would expect to be given market conditions and for the normal swing of the annual cycle. So let's dive into these Hillsborough market statistics. A section here, which is what I was talking about for Pinellas County, so far as just the massive amount of flood damage and stuff that had happened over there. Pinellas County definitely was hit a lot harder than Hillsborough County was, especially in Helene. Not saying that Hillsborough County wasn't without its problem spots and flooded homes, but if we're looking at sheer numbers, Pinellas County has a lot more. So I want to include that here in the Hillsborough report as well, just so you can kind of understand the market forces. Just keep in mind that those forces are not quite the same impact and should resolve a lot faster than Pinellas County does. And again, the primary reason why is because there's only a few limited areas in Hillsborough County that had experienced this flooding, but by and large, the vast bulk of housing in Hillsborough County made it through without, too many problems at all. Woo, Nelly, Pinellas County. So obviously, a lot has happened in Pinellas County in the last few months, no less than 2 hurricanes. And I will get to the stats, I promise. But it's important for me to kind of go over what is in the mix. And some of this is going to be my personal experience, having flooded in Shore Acres before, Tropical Storm Eta in 2020, and seeing how all of that played out. And then kind of extrapolating that out to the larger Pinellas County region. Now, what usually happens is there's what I call the hurricane hangover. So there's a storm, it's coming through, it's coming close, near miss. Whenever you have a hurricane come by, insurance shuts down, closings stop, and there is a big blip in the real estate stats. What's interesting about the 2 hurricanes that we had is they basically covered like a 2-week span of 2 months, September and October. And obviously the additional change is that, Pinellas County was significantly impacted by these hurricanes. Not just the beaches, it was the beaches, it was, Shore Acres, it was Riviera Bay, it was even sections of Clearwater, which is usually pretty high and dry up there. The rainfall that came from Milton overwhelmed it and flooded a bunch of houses. So whenever Tropical Storm Eta came through in 2020, I was actually selling the house across the street from me at that point in time. Our elevations were, and here's the thing, Tropical Storm Eta was not anything like Helene or Milton by any stretch of the imagination, but it did flood a lot of houses in the St. Petersburg area. And what I noticed was, basically the same thing. So flood comes through, everybody does the recovery, people cut out the drywall up to 4 feet, pile it up by the street. I was actually selling the house across the street at that point in time, and the setup was kind of interesting. So my house was 4.4 feet above sea level. We had about a foot of water in the house with that one. The other at-grade house across the street was about 3.4 feet above sea level. And then the house next to that was the one I was selling, which was a stilt house. And obviously, with the stilt house, the first living space was up at, like 11, 12 feet. So the second story did not flooded. What happened was we had, 4 or 5 feet of water in the road. And then somebody decided, hey, I have a lifted F-350. High tide is the time that I need to leave. And so they produced a huge bow wave, which crushed everybody's garage door and promptly flooded all the houses there. I believe I did another video on this, but I was actually pumping out the garage and was ahead of the floodwaters. I was actually dropping the floodwater in the garage, and then this person came by, caved in my garage door, and basically within 20 seconds, I had, a foot of water in the house. So the recovery effort from that in Shore Acres was the same thing. We tore out everything up to 4 feet. All the cabinets went out, all the furniture and all that's piled up by the street. I had the house across the street, the stilt house, under contract at that point. I was representing the seller on that one. Obviously, the buyer's concerned about their house. They come out, they look, they see the damage to the garage door and that it's been caved in. And they also see all of the drywall and cabinets piled up by the street. And then they promptly cancel the contract. So they're like, we don't want to deal with this. We don't even want to risk it. Pull the ripcord, let's go. So at that point, the owner of that house was like, Kyle, what do we do? I want to sell the house. I was like, just sit tight. I was like, I think that we should take the house off the market for a few weeks until everything kind of gets cleaned up. Because my hunch was that human memories are short. Just people are kind of people. If you can't see something directly, personally, it is hard to keep in mind that it is an actual risk, especially when the area is so appealing. And I promise that this is going to tie into kind of the stats and what I'm thinking is probably going to happen. So anyway, we temporarily took that house off the market. My house took 2 years to put back together. A lot of that was supply chain because of COVID and all that. But anyway, the house that I was selling across the street, that one we put back on the market as soon as most of the debris in the neighborhood had been picked up. There was still containers and pods and stuff like that in driveways, but most of the actual debris had been picked up. So once that was done, we put it back up on the market, and we were pretty quickly back under contract and successfully sold that home. Now, let's talk about current day. Obviously, the scale of Helene and Milton is a lot bigger than Tropic Storm Eta was. Most people, if you said, hey, how many storms were flooded in Tropic Storm Eta, they wouldn't be able to tell you. And honestly, as a resident, it was extremely difficult to find even estimated storm surges for Tropical Storm Eta, but it was just the right mix. It was about 5 feet. Now with Helene, we definitely had a little more than that. Here is my thought. So anecdotally, again, this is not based on statistics. What usually happens is there's what I call the hurricane hangover. So storm comes through, everyone gets a little skittish about buying a home in an area that had a near miss. You have a period of people backing off, but then eventually new buyers come back and the things kind of resume normal activities. My professional hunch, as well as having lived through this, is that's what's going to also happen with the St. Petersburg area. It's just going to take a lot longer because the scale is so much larger. But I will say anecdotally what happened is there were so many people affected by Helene and Milton, like people that were immediately flooded in Hurricane Helene especially, that I watched the number of rentals that we had in Pinellas County basically got chopped in a third. Basically, we rented a third of the rentals in Pinellas County within a couple weeks. And on the sales side of things, we had 20% of everything that was available go under contract within, again, about a week. And again, I can only talk anecdotally about my business and my interactions with people. I had more than a few people call me, hey, Kyle, we've been thinking about buying a house or a second house because we were thinking about X, Y, and Z, but we were flooded in Hurricane Helene. That has forced our hand. They were like, Kyle, we have to have a house. We have to buy something as soon as possible. So despite what normally happens, which is people get skittish, we actually had a surge in demand immediately following those two hurricanes. What we're seeing now is probably best described as a split market. So, longtime viewers of these statistics on my channel, now you might want to remember back to your mathematics classes with mean, median, and mode, or average and median. So, average is when you take, let's say, 5 houses, you add up the sales price of all of those houses and then divide it by 5. That'll give you the average. Median is a little different. Let's say that you have 100 houses that sold. The median price is the point at which there's an equal number of homes for sale above that price and below that price. So it can be significantly different than the average. Typically, I pay more attention to the median sales price because it doesn't swing around as much. It's not as effective by a lot of very low priced houses or a few very expensive houses selling in a given particular time frame. Since the number of sales is down, though, it does affect it a little more than usual, simply because the sample size is lower than it has been. So if we're only selling 1,000 houses, for example, the median sales price is going to move around a lot more than if we were selling 2,000 or 3,000 homes per month. But of course, I would like to get into these stats so you can understand what's going on in Hillsborough County. Total number of closed sales was down 7.8% from 1,054 homes to 972. Cash sales are actually down, which is interesting. It's down 16.5% from 254 to 212. Pinellas County is the opposite of that. The cash sales are actually up significantly in Pinellas County from a lot of those storm damage purchases. So that is one metric that I do keep an eye on to kind of see what the total Class D or, kind of disaster house, how many of those are selling at any point in time. Median sales price, essentially no change. We held at 425. That is a little down off of the area that Hillsborough County had been maintaining. So Hillsborough County basically bounced between like 428, 429, 435, 436 for most of the year. And we had a little low spot of October at 421, and we're back up to 425 now. So again, median sales price in Hillsborough County has not moved that much. It has held pretty steady. We're still within that $10,000 to $15,000 price range. Average sales price is up 2.2% to $575,364. Median percent of original list price is down 1.1% to 95.7% of the original asking price. And median time to contract is up 46.2% to 38 days. So whenever we start getting closer to like 40, 45 days, that is where we start to get into like neutral market territory. The thing that I want to keep an eye on with this is as we get further distance from Helene and Milton, will we see that number go down? If it continues to go up, then obviously that means that, the market is slowing down. Things are staying on the market a lot longer, and you usually start to see price decreases with that. My hunch here is we probably had, if you look at this, we had honestly 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks of nothing happening because of the hurricanes, insurance not being able to bind, no closings because of the storm. So that's naturally going to add a bunch of days to that. So again, whenever you're looking at statistics and there has been a recent major event, you always have to consider the impact that that major event is going to have on the numbers. And so in this case, we know that the market was closed down 2, 3, 4 weeks in the midst of the contracts that closed in November. So we kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, and we're not discounting it. We're just saying we want to see confirmation of this in, December, January, February. Number of new listings was up 7.5% from 1,387 to 1,491. Total active inventory is up 22.7% from 3,198 to 3,924. That is a pretty big jump in the number of homes for sale. If we look at the month to month for inventory, we did go above 4,000 a few times in 2024, but not by much. So July, we were at 4086. August, we were at 4061. September, we were at 4038. Foreclosures and short sales are the doom and gloom section. Foreclosures were down 33% to 6, and short sales went from 1 to 2. So not a lot of major impact in that section. Now, the price breakdowns where we look at, time to contract and close sales for each price point. Again, Pinellas County, you can see a very big shift. that has happened. And it is not that there is suddenly a lot of $250,000 homes that have gone up for sale. What it is, at least in the case of St. Pete, there's a lot of $500,000, $600,000 homes that have been destroyed in the hurricanes that are now up for sale and have closed that are now up for sale in that $250,000, $300,000 range. Well, so I can tell because I look at this stuff every day, but you can also tell by checking the time frames of, houses, what they sold for, and in a particular area. And you could see that, basically there was no 250 or $300,000 homes on the beaches, single family homes in the last couple years, and now there is a decent number of them. So, and same thing with Shore Acres. Shore Acres wasn't much under 400,000 a year or two ago, and now there's a large number of homes for sale out there in the 200 to 300 range. It's still the same house. It's not like there's been a bunch of new houses out there. It's just the conditions of the houses are, they're significantly damaged still. Hillsborough County doesn't see that impact quite as much. We haven't really seen a big spike other than, 250 to 300 is up 22.9%, but it's at 59. That's not to me, whenever you have like that low of a number, like 22% change isn't, like, it doesn't take too much to move it that much. Now, if it was like 80 or 90% more, that would be a little bit more noteworthy. And on the new listing side of things, again, nothing too crazy. 100 to 150, there's 650 to 200,000. There's 22 new listings, which is only a 10% move. 250 to 300 is up 40%, which is, that's starting to get my attention at 108. But then 300 to 400 is up 9.8% to 4 points to 416. But if we look at inventory by current price, we can see that the 200 and under has seen some pretty significant movement. There's 176.9% more homes in the $150,000 to $200,000 range for sale now than there was November 2023. Now, it's only a total of 36. However, that's almost 3 times as many homes that were for sale this time last year. So to me, that is significant. 200 to 250, it's only 29.3% change to 53. Everything's kind of 30, 10%. The bulk of the market is still 300 to 600,000. So 300 to 400,000 is up 36.9% to 1,064 homes. 400 to 600,000 is up 12.3% to 1,402. So again, a lot of this is just going to be because, just Hillsborough County did not have the wide scale flooding that Pinellas County did. Now, I know there was definitely flooding in Hillsborough County, Forest Hills up by Terrace. My brother was flooded in Ruskin in his house. Apollo Beach, I know that there are problem areas, but those are, relatively localized when compared to the vast swaths of waterfront homes and even inland homes in St. Petersburg and Pinellas County that were flooded. So those are the stats for Hillsborough County. So as always, the analysis is always the crux of the matter. We definitely have a bit of a separated market, which happens on occasion, right? So normally Hillsborough County and Pinellas County, they usually track pretty close together. Hillsborough County usually sells for a little bit less, usually takes a little bit longer for things to sell over there. But by and large, they usually rise and fall in a similar manner. There's been a few times in the last 10 years or so where they've split. That's usually a pretty short-term thing. I do think that the storms that have come through are setting up something considerably different. So my hunch is Pinellas County is going to become very much more detached from Hillsborough County, just so far as prices go. And even when looking at Pinellas County, what I'm seeing develop is there's basically kind of 2 markets over there. So you have the normal inland part of the county, which, as far as I could tell, is still progressing, selling, still has the same amount of interest as always. Doesn't flood. It's in flood zone X. So you don't have those concerns. People are still interested in buying there. We've closed, I feel like 12 houses out over there. All of that. So the central part, the inland part, the non-flood zone part, that's going to become one market, and then you have the waterfront bands out on the beaches. Not so much the West Coast, so like the West Coast of Pinellas County is actually one of the higher points of the county. Town names like Bel Air Bluffs, things like that kind of clue you into that. The mainland shore of the intercoastal, frequently like 20, 30 feet. Clearwater gets up to like 50 feet. The really low sections are usually the beaches, of course, but even lower than that is going to be, Shore Acres, Riviera Bay, and, those sections along the Tampa Bay side of Pinellas County. So I'm assuming that we're basically going to see two different markets. So we're going to see the flood damaged houses, and then we're going to see kind of the main market. The problem is in Pinellas County, we're not going to be able to get a lot of insight from the entire county stats. So I'm actually going to be looking a little bit more at the Hillsborough County stats to kind of suss out what's going on in the main market of the interior of Pinellas County. That said, the general rule is as flood damaged areas, as storm damaged areas, as they start to recover, people have relatively short memories. And, if they didn't see something in person, what usually happens is buyers kind of forget that there was major storms, and then sales and prices tend to return to normal, all things being equal. The area definitely is going to have a little bit of time of recovery. Hillsborough County is probably going to recover a lot faster than Pinellas County is. Pinellas County, I've been telling folks to basically plan on 6 to 18 months. So far as things returning to normal, most houses getting put back together. In my case, when I was flooded in Tropical Storm Eta, that took 2 years. The recovery does take some time, but Hillsborough County is, a little bit more, didn't have as many of the major wide scale neighborhood impacts as Pinellas County did. So Hillsborough County should return to the previous state faster. And we can kind of see that because these numbers are not that crazy compared to like the summertime numbers. Like median sales price isn't down, inventory isn't up crazy. There hasn't been a lot of big movement in the number of new homes listed, like price wise or anything like that. Hillsborough County seems to be holding pretty steady. On the flip side, if you have been thinking about buying, the nice thing is there's a lot more houses now to choose from than there was a year or two ago. So, you also have that going for you. Again, let's see how all this shapes up. Every storm is a little different, but I'll be here giving you the best information that I can. So thank you so much for tuning in to watch these Hillsborough County stats. My name is Kyle Sasser. If you're looking for your own great place in Tampa Bay, I would love to help you out. You can reach me at 727-300-2111, or if you prefer, there's a link to my calendar down below. You can book a chat for the time that works best for you. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I always try to respond to every comment that we get, so feel free to leave a comment there. And really appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen to these statistics. I know I can get a little wordy every now and then. Trying to deliver the best information I can to you. So thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Kyle Sasser, and I'll talk to you soon.